And the game ends 1-1 between Arsenal and Manchester City on the Super Sunday match day with goals from Haaland and a last-minute equaliser from Gabriel Martinelli. Now this matchup has kind of turned out to be one of the biggest rivalries in the Premier League over the last 2 to 3 seasons. Usually we see Liverpool, Manchester City, but now it's kind of become one of the spectacles in the Premier League in the most recent years, and that's just due to the matchups: Pep versus Arteta, Haaland versus Gabriel, previous head-to-head results, etc. And you saw last season, at least in the last couple seasons, City have never managed to grasp a result over Arsenal. It's always either been a draw or Arsenal have either nicked the win, or at least last season we saw a completely different side to Arsenal against Manchester City when they beat them 5-1 at home. And now City coming into the Emirates with that kind of result in the back of their heads, they needed to prove a point today. But at the same time, Arsenal also needed to prove a point in the sense that they've just come off of a loss against Liverpool, and their Big Six record has kind of come to an end. So they also needed to prove a point today to kind of make a statement saying, they're still ready to compete. I think this is the type of fixture that kind of gets resulted from the lineup that gets put out there. Now, if we take a look at the lineup that Arteta put out for Arsenal, I think a lot of Arsenal fans would have been kind of disappointed, a little bit underwhelmed with the way he kind of set his team out. And I think we saw it immediately. In the first half, we saw how, flat-footed they were in terms of progressing the ball forward. And that's because of these three. Arteta, for whatever reason, doesn't want to start a creative midfielder if Odegaard isn't fit. And it's surprising. On paper, it makes absolutely no sense that you're starting Rice, Zubimendi, and Mikel Merino against Manchester City and Liverpool. Against teams like Bilbao or whatever in the Champions League, against the smaller teams, you can get away with starting them three. You can. Not to disrespect the other teams, but you can. But against City and Liverpool, you can't. You can't get away with it, because at Anfield is a different story. They're away from home and they conceded a set piece, which inevitably made them lose the game. But this at home, starting these three, that's something that, I don't know, I think Arsenal fans never want to see again. When you have the likes of Nwaneri, Eze, Saka and Martinelli are wingers, but when you have the likes of Eze and Nwaneri on the bench, those two kind of being there for competition for Odegaard, there's absolutely no need to start Mikel Merino. Absolutely no need. I think we saw Arsenal struggle a lot in terms of creativity. I think their biggest threat in that first half was definitely Madueke, who, I'll get to the second half, but he's kind of been, Arsenal's outlet as of late because of Saka's injury. He's kind of been the main man to kind of push the ball out to kind of make things happen for Arsenal. And I thought he was, quite good that first half. He's the only one kind of doing something for Arsenal. I thought Trossard was very flat in that first half, again, similar to Merino. Gyökeres didn't receive much service. I think when you look at, City's lineup, it was kind of expected. I think the commentator said that this is the third game in a row where City have put out the same lineup. So in terms of City's side, it was very expected. I think as long as you have the likes of Foden, Reinders, Doku, and Haaland starting, that is their absolute best in terms of creativity, kind of playing their own game. And it's funny because for the first goal, it was actually Arsenal who got picked out in transition. Normally you'd see City get picked out in transition, but in this time it was Arsenal. And it was because of this man. This man absolutely terrorized Arsenal for that goal, because the way the goal happened was that there were 3 or 4 players kind of bundled up in the center. Arsenal had a very high line. Haaland managed to flick it on past Gabriel and Rice, I think. And then just like that, Tijani Reinders, ball carrying, he's just running at Saliba, and then Haaland manages to pivot away, make the space for himself. Personally, I thought Reinders was going to pass it a little bit too late. Passes it on time. Haaland 1-0. And Haaland on transitions. This guy's a demon. Absolute demon. It's a scary sight to see for defenders when Haaland's just literally running into space, whether it's behind you, next to you, in front of you. It is a scary sight to see, because 9 times out of 10, this guy bags. This guy 100% scores. And that's exactly what happened. 1-0 Manchester City, 9 minutes in, or 10 minutes in. From then on, all eyes were on Arsenal. All eyes were on Arsenal, on how to respond, how they can kind of get back into this game. And for the latter half of that second half, they really just couldn't. They really couldn't get it clicking. They couldn't get into the final third. I thought City defended so well in that towards the end of the first half. And for the majority of the game, to be honest, we'll talk about that. I thought O'Reilly had a good game today. Gvardiol had a good game today. Doku also had a good game today in terms of frustrating Arsenal. But all eyes were on Arsenal and all eyes were on Arteta, because as soon as halftime came around, the halftime subs that he had to make were huge. he had to make some big subs. And I think in terms of substitutions, these two were 100% the go-tos to bring on. And I think a lot of people, like myself, were skeptical on whether Eze and Saka would be subbed on at halftime or in the 60th minute. Because Arteta tends to do that. He tends to wait a little bit before he makes his move. But Arteta was like, we're at home, straight into it, subs on Eze and Saka. And I was surprised to see Madueke go off because, like I said, he was Arsenal's best player that first half. In all honesty, I thought Madueke could be shifted to the left. I thought Trossard and Mourinho would go off for Saka and Eze. But Arteta made his call, made his move, and Eze and Saka got subbed on. And for the first, I'd say 10 minutes of that second half, Arsenal were like looking way better. Moving the ball forward faster, getting it out to Saka and Eze faster. They were able to create a little bit of trouble in the City box. But again, like they just couldn't, get some shots off. They couldn't get some, they really couldn't trouble Donnarumma. The only way they could really trouble Donnarumma was with set pieces. And this guy, for set pieces, it just shows how commanding you need to be as a goalkeeper to stop these type of set pieces for Arsenal. Every single time Declan Rice would drop an absolute bomb into the box from a corner, whether it's Saka or Rice, Donnarumma was there like 8 out of 10 times to head the ball away. Or City's defenders would also defend it really well. So in that sense, City defensively today, until the very last minute, they were very, very good. And for the majority of the second half, Arsenal dominated. We could see the stats. For the second half, Arsenal had the ball. They had the ball, but they just couldn't, they were just kind of circling in and around this area for in City's box. But they just couldn't get shots off. City defended in that low block, similar to what we saw last season at the Etihad when Arsenal were 1-0 up and they were parking the bus for the entire second half, having like 11 players behind the ball, having letting City have the ball the whole time. City literally replicated what Arsenal did to them last season at the Emirates today, and they did it so well up until the last minute. And it's funny because last year we saw Stones score the last minute equalizer to make it 2-2. This time we saw Martinelli score to make it 1-1. So the tale kind of writes itself. There's always a twist between Arsenal and City, which is what I love about this matchup. And I kind of have to give credit to Pep for kind of deploying that low block, because that is something I have never seen Pep do before. I don't know if it's just me. I can't remember the last time City played a low block like that against a big club, like defending a lead against a big club with like 45 minutes left to play or like 30 minutes left to play. The fact that he subbed off Haaland, Foden when there's like 20-30 minutes left to go, it kind of shows like City really just wanted to get the 3 points, sit back, frustrate Arsenal, get the 3 points. Arteta's response was, subbing on Nwaneri, subbing on Martinelli, to kind of throw the dices forward. But it was proven to show that to get past the City defense, there needed to be one small little chance, small moment of magic that Arsenal needed in order to score. And when Arsenal, for the majority of last season, were screaming, or at least their fans are screaming for like a creator, someone who can like be unpredictable, someone who can make something out of nothing, he finally pulled through. And for the majority of that second half, he didn't really do too much. I thought he was a little bit quiet, but that's all he needs. He needs that one moment to kind of make something out of nothing. Arsenal picked up the ball in their own half, deep into their own half. Eze, out of nowhere, lobs it through, a delicious through ball to Martinelli. And Martinelli, who we saw in the Champions League against Bilbao, one-on-one against the keeper when it's like kind of difficult for him to get it under the control that he wants to, proving that in front of goal, one-on-one against the keeper, he can do damage. And this was tough. This was a really good finish. This was like bouncing in front of him on his less favorite foot. It was on his left foot, but dinks it over Donnarumma with his right. Kind of at like a weird angle. I don't know how he scored that, to be honest, but what a finish, and 1-1 Arsenal. And that, you could tell, was a huge relief, because if Arsenal didn't score this game, the media would absolutely go crazy. And I think they still would, because a lot of fans would have expected Arsenal to win this game. A lot of people in general would have expected Arsenal to win this game because they've kind of been perceived as title contenders, and City really haven't. I think Arsenal, for the first time in this matchup, have gone in as favourites to win the game, and they haven't. So I think a lot of eyes will still be on Arsenal, but Gabriel Martinelli today really saved Arteta in terms of his team selection. And I think that Arteta, hopefully, doesn't make the same mistake, because deploying these three against a big club will never work. It is proven twice now, it will never work. He needs to be more brave in his squad selection, in his starting 11 selection, because if he had started Eze or Nwaneri today instead of Mourinho, I can guarantee you we would have seen a different first half from Arsenal, 100%. Whether or not they win the game, I don't know. I think City, you have to give credit to them. They defended really, really well. I think it definitely would have been a different type of dynamic in the game that we saw today. 1-1, it's not a terrible scoreline for either team. I think that City would have definitely been frustrated that they didn't come away with 3 points because of the way they defended the whole game. Liverpool, 5 points ahead, running away with the league, and it's only September, but there's still the rest of the season to go. Liverpool obviously have a tough run of fixtures coming in the Prem, and Arsenal go to Newcastle next, and that is going to be a really interesting game because Arsenal always struggle against Newcastle at St. James's Park. Big point for City in terms of where they were. I think they were like 13th before this game. A lot of big games in the Premier League happened this weekend. Liverpool beating Everton in the Merseyside derby, and they played so well that game. United-Chelsea was a funny game. It was a really funny game. Yeah, I think the red cards kind of dictated the way the game went. But that will be the end of the review, guys. Hope you guys have enjoyed. But yeah, leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and comment what you think. Comment on how you think the game went and what to expect from both teams upcoming. So more match reviews coming soon. All socials linked below. Short form content will be out as well. And yeah, I'll see you guys very, very soon. Peace.